Have you ever wondered about the struggles and internal battles that people face on their pathways to becoming a mother, especially when the journey involves medical interventions such as IVF? We have with us Katherine Hunter, a mother and lawyer who's going to share her personal journey through the highs and lows of motherhood, starting from her struggles with infertility, receiving the unexpected news of being pregnant, and the emotions that followed. Let's delve into Katherine's remarkable journey.
The Golden Hour Birth Podcast, a podcast about real birth stories and creating connections through our shared experiences.
Childbirth isn't just about the child. It's about the person who gave birth, their lives, their wisdom, and their empowerment.
We're Liz
and Natalie,
the Golden Hour Birth Podcast, and we're here to laugh with you,
cry with you,
and hold space for you. Welcome to the Golden Hour Birth Podcast. I am your co-host, Liz.
And I'm Natalie, and tonight we have Katherine Hunter on. She is a local mom from St. Louis. She is a practicing lawyer, and she has also written a book called Path to Motherhood, which I read in 2021. So I love it and admire it, and thank you so much for coming on tonight.
Thank you so much for having me and for your kind words. It means a lot.
I also just want to give a shout out to October month, Pregnancy and Infant Loss Awareness Month. So anyone needs to kind of check in with themselves and where they are, feel free to maybe look at a different episode. But we just send all of our love to any mothers who've gone through miscarriages or stillbirth or so. You want to go ahead and introduce yourself and a little bit about your family?
Yeah. So I live in St. Louis. Like you said, I've been here since 2015. I am from Kansas City originally. So go Chiefs. So I went to Mizzou, University of Missouri, Columbia, for undergrad and met my now husband. Then, it was our sophomore year, and he actually went to Washington University here in St. Louis. So we met through mutual friends and we dated long distance. It's 2 hours for those who don't know between Columbia and St. Louis. And then we both moved to Chicago in 2006. I'm really, people are going to figure out my age very quickly. And I went to law school in Chicago and we were there until, 2015. We have 3 kids. Ages 8. She just turned 8 this week. Ages 6. He just turned 6 last week. And then 3. We have a newly 3-year-old too. And a dog. So, we love traveling together, hanging out together for the most part, most of the time, hiking. And you're right. I am a lawyer. I'm an ERISA attorney, so employee benefits. I recently, though, stopped practicing law, and it's been overall really positive change for me. It's a big change, but it was the right time to step away. And I'm not sure what I'll do long term, but right now I'm doing a few things. I am a session member for my church here in St. Louis in University City, and it's a church that's really dedicated to social justice. So that's been very rewarding for me. And then I'm also going to help start a Missouri chapter of an organization called Whitney Strong, which is, you should look it up. It's an awesome organization that is based in Louisville, but there's some St. Louis ties and pretty much dedicated to reducing gun violence in bipartisan, pragmatic ways. So it's an exciting time. And thank you, Natalie, for reaching out to me, for reading the book and inviting me on. This is my first podcast.
Hey. Fun. So you're an author as well?
I like to describe myself as that. Yeah. So the book is Paths to Motherhood. It's available on Amazon. It's self-published. It's an anthology. So I think we have 11 authors total, including myself. And it's our stories, our paths to motherhood, our stories, how we got to the place we are now, whether it be through IVF, like myself, adoption, embryo adoption, traditional adoption. There are some authors who got pregnant naturally, but it took time. So, or they had losses before, which I did as well. So So I do. I like to describe myself as an author, but maybe I need to write a couple more books to really claim that title. So
anything within fertility and motherhood and birth, I am so there.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate that. And I feel the same.
So, Natalie, did you meet Katherine from reading her book then?
Yeah. I somehow saw it on Facebook.
I don't know how you did.
Ever so randomly, it popped up. And I started looking at it. I was trying to find out some more information on you, honestly.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
This and then I ended up ordering the book. I read it right away within a summer trip to the lake. I remember reading it at the lake.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a time when a new friend of mine was going through treatment. I was like, how do I back the thing?
Which is amazing that you did that, by the way.
Well, she ended up getting pregnant right after that. So
awesome. I'm sure it was enlightening to you to read women's stories about something that you had never been through. And yeah, I don't know I think it's a book I was going to say, I don't know who gravitates toward it the most, but I think it's a book for many different people. It's a book it's kind of like a chicken noodle for the soul type book. Remember? I mean, maybe you guys are a little younger than me, but yeah. Yeah. So, yeah. And it's pick it up if you are going through obviously infertility or pregnancy loss or both of them. But also if you're trying to understand it more, if you are trying to, kind of pay tribute, so to speak, to a time that you went through something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. And I still have the book.
Thanks, Natalie. Yeah, I guess maybe that's a good segue then into my first, I shouldn't say my first pregnancy. It was technically my third pregnancy, but my first birth.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I write a lot more about my infertility struggles in the book, so I'll just briefly summarize them here. And for those of you listening, you can't see that I'm such a lawyer. I have my notes here, so I'm going to try not to. Well, yeah, on my legal pad, of course. That's all I have at home. But I mean, this was 2015 when I gave birth for the first time, so I looked back at it. Was kind of it was meaningful and it definitely brought back feelings of nostalgia when I was looking at all of the stuff that I had written during my pregnancy, and I did write my birth story shortly after that. But also, my oldest just turned 8 this week, so it was just it was an emotional week looking back. So for those of you, even if you're not going through infertility, I mean, and if it's not your first pregnancy, if it's your third or fourth, try to I just sent emails to myself, jotting down, what the week was like. And I obviously did it less and less as time went on. But it was fun to look back at. So we got married, Heath and I, in June 2011. And then he went to business school in Evanston. He is a Kellogg grad. And so, I was working. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the MBA program, but it's very fun. It's not like law school. It's very social, I should say. I'm not saying it's easy, but it was very social. So he was having the time of his life, and he was not necessarily, we were 27 when we got married, so we were 28 at this point. He was not eager. He didn't feel pressure to have a baby. That was not where most of our friends were. We were in Chicago, where people tend to get married a little bit later than they do in Kansas City or St. Louis or other, small towns, not even small cities. But by the end of 2012, I had pressured him enough to start trying, and we just, we didn't get pregnant right away. And I'm a worrier, so I didn't know if it meant anything, but I was worried, and I'm very impatient. I have good qualities too, but those are some of my not so endearing qualities. And yeah, so I was like, oh, something's wrong. And actually something probably was wrong, but at the time I was just very negative about it, and I didn't know if it meant something or not. By April, I had convinced my OBGYN to do, I'm blanking on the name of it now. I think it's a
AMA.
Yes, I did that too. You're right. Good job, Natalie. What's the procedure? See, this is why it was so long ago. I don't remember. HCG are your levels. What's the
hysterectomy,
where you can see, they can visualize your tubes, your fallopian tubes? Thank you. She's so helpful. You're in it. I love it. Oh my gosh. So it's funny how you do forget these things. Like that was my world back then, you know? I knew everything. Yeah. So in HSG to visualize my fallopian tubes, because I had some symptoms that made me think maybe I had like endometriosis, but kind of harder it was then to diagnose that without surgery. So we were just kind of pulling straws at this point. What maybe could this give us information? Well, it does sort of, the test clean out your fallopian tubes. And so I did end up getting pregnant that month. But I had my first miscarriage shortly after that. And it was devastating. Again, I won't go in, the book goes into a lot more detail, of course, but it was absolutely devastating. It was hard for our marriage. It was a really low time. 2013 was probably one of my worst years, which, you know, it's not, I have a very charmed life. So fortunately the lowest of the low was not horrible, but it was dark time for me. And by the end of that year, we finally went to see a reproductive endocrinologist, and he was like, "Oh, you're so young." And, you know, I really got sick of hearing that early on too, because as anyone who's been through infertility knows, like it can happen for a variety of reasons, and it doesn't have to have anything to do with your age. You know,
we have 45-year-olds coming to us, and then I'm all of a sudden now typing births that are 2000.
Isn't that crazy?
And I'm like, wait.
Yeah, that makes you feel, you're like, wait, I need to do the math here. Yeah.
And then I look and I'm
how
like,
old am I?
Oh my God,
yeah. I know.
It's just like,
yeah, agreed. So anyway, I heard a lot of that, but he was responsive. Like I started Clomid to see, because they thought that maybe my right side was blocked by some endometriosis, but they weren't sure. So we did Clomid to kind of increase the chances that I would at least have more follicles, maybe on the left side that wasn't blocked. We did that for 3 months and nothing. And then the 4th month, I think I had a cyst or something and couldn't do it. I forget all the details. But anyway, so my insurance coverage at the time I was in Illinois covered IVF. So that did contribute to me being more open-minded to IVF. Yeah. Like most people don't want to do IVF, but I kind of did. A part of me did. I thought, look, this was originally meant for women who had blocked tubes. So let's do it. And so fast forward, we did it. It was hard. It was really hard, but it did result in another pregnancy, and that resulted, unfortunately, in another miscarriage. And it was a pivotal time, and I write about this in the book, where it was just my second miscarriage just really, it did change me in really important ways. And I resolved to dig in and try to change my lifestyle and Heath's. We did a lot of things that if they didn't increase our fertility, rather, they helped our overall health, you know? Yeah. And I, as we have a shelter dog sitting next to us right now, Liz's new dog, I'm thinking back to things I did during that time where I was really not knowing if I was going to be a mom. So I volunteered at Pause Chicago, which is like Oprah's, it's not her shelter. I'm putting air quotes here. She just has donated a lot it's just an amazing organization. And, I really dedicated more time to my friendships and tried to be more empathetic, and same with my marriage. And I started taking violin lessons. And so, you know, that was I look back at that time with fondness too. It wasn't all bad. Once I had that second miscarriage, we decided to change clinics, IVF clinics, and we did IVF again October. Oh my gosh, this is October 2014. So for the second time, because that first IVF cycle, we only had one embryo left over, and they transferred that to our second IVF clinic. So then we ended up having a total, after that second IVF, 9 frozen embryos that were chromosomally tested, so PGS tested. Yeah. chromosomally normal, I guess is what you would say. And I wanted to rush into the transfer, but I forget all the details. Part of it was Christmas time, the holidays, rather. The clinic took off for 3 weeks. I don't know if you guys do that here. But anyway, it pushed it to January. And gosh, you guys, everything happens like, I'm not saying everything happens for a reason, but it just happens in like a really cool way if you lean into it, you know, and you're open to that. Like I always wanted, this is so silly, but I always wanted a fall baby. And then I freaking have an October 4th due date, you know? And so we'll get into the pregnancy now, I guess, unless you guys have questions. I'm just like talking your ear off here, but.
No, I love it. Honestly, I am not religious at all, but I love the part of your book where you say like, I'm in the belly of the whale.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what that, it's always sticks with me. And I just love that part because like you said that you like more emphasis, focus on your marriage, friendships, like took up all these hobbies.
Yeah.
While you were kind of just like in this matter of like, am I going to pursue IVF more or kind of where am I?
Yeah, no, it was a pivotal moment. So yeah. And I named my story after that. And isn't it so crazy that I run across this blog post? I mean, you guys, this was 2013 and 2014. There were not these podcasts. Yeah. There was not Big Little Feelings. There was not, like, Instagram existed, but it was not what it is today. That's right. There was not, and I know now even like Kristen from Big Little Feelings talks about, she wanted to know what a miscarriage was like. I was literally Googling on my couch during a miscarriage, what is it like? Because, and like I found a clip from Beyonce. Like, I mean, now I'm going off on a tangent for sure, but I just, I was trying to piece together a lot during this time without, I felt like, a lot of support. And now, even with all the support out there, it is still undoubtedly a very isolating time. So, but yeah, I'm not terribly religious either, even though I'm a session member at my church. I question a lot, you know, and I questioned a lot during my infertility. And then when my daughter was born, it really was like, oh my gosh, she was meant for me. I don't know how that works. I don't know how we're connected. None of us really know, but there was something that I really truly felt in like my gut. But yeah, so the pregnancy was, the way I guess I would describe it is it was really hard for me to get pregnant and stay pregnant, but all 3 of my pregnancies since then have been, really easy. Fortunately, I had some nausea with Harlow, but I was super grateful for that. Mm-hmm. I came from a place of just like major gratitude, and I don't want to complain because I want this so bad. Mm-hmm. So that was good because I am a complainer. So it's like good that I went through what I did because, oh my gosh, I can't even imagine if I would have like gotten pregnant the first month, you guys. I'd have been a terror to my husband, if nothing else. Yeah, so we moved to St. Louis during that time. That's like a long, convoluted story but it did have something to do with, we wanted to be closer to our families. And we were having a baby. So that was really, again, like looking back to that, especially that first, I call it my first pregnancy, but, my first baby, you know, that I have in my arms, like that time when I was pregnant with her, I look back at it with so much fondness. And it was this summer we moved here, and then just this time, right? Like October, I thought though that I was going to have a September baby because a lot of my friends had randomly had their babies early, and I'm a fairly petite person. And I don't know why I thought that mattered. Like I can't hold this baby in or something. I don't know. And so we get to September, and that's when I started to get irate. I'm like, I'm 36 weeks pregnant. This is miserable. I was seeing a chiropractor. I had a doula. We hired one here in St. Louis. So she was helping me like find a chiropractor and an acupuncturist. So I was doing all the things, and it's still miserable. And that is when I remember I started complaining. And I look back at my like emails to myself, and that's when I'm like, try not to complain, but this is really hard and miserable. So anyway, 4 days past my due date, I go into to see my OBGYN, he was great. He did ultrasounds every visit. And then that gave me a lot of assurance. He's not here anymore, unfortunately. He was awesome. Like coming from, and I did kind of skip over this. There was definitely anxiety, you know, during that pregnancy. Yeah. But I'll be honest, like once we got to probably second trimester, I had this feeling, and I'm a worrier. I had this feeling that it was going to be okay. The first like couple months there was a lot of anxiety, but it wasn't overwhelming because I knew this was different. It felt different. It doesn't mean nothing bad can happen, but it wasn't like my other two pregnancies before that had ended in miscarriage very early, like 8 weeks. So anyway, overall pregnancy was uneventful, thankfully. And I even was pregnant during a really hot summer. I mean, they're all hot here, and people don't realize in St. Louis, there's so much humidity.
Oh, yeah, I realize.
You know, but people that aren't from here don't realize it because they don't know that we are the source of so many rivers, and there's so much water here, and it is freaking miserable. But yeah, I suffered through that, and I was like, it's fine. I can get through this. And October 4th came, and it went, and I still was like, this is so, I was like, I'm being punished. Like all my friends had their babies early. And so we went 4 days after my due date. The OBGYN was like, you know what? I'm actually going out of town this weekend. I was like, no. What? So he said he would induce me that night. And I was like, I was kind of shocked just because, I don't know. I didn't think I would be induced. I had a doula. I was like, no, I'm going to but no, I was like, great. I'm ready for this. We checked in at 9 p.m., which I didn't know was a thing until I was told that we check people in at all hours.
All hours?
Yeah. I'm like, okay, I'll wait all day. And we went and had dinner beforehand at IHOP. So random. It was just by our house. We lived in Clayton, and there's IHOP right back down the street.
Yeah.
And I guess I just was trying to have toast, and that's why we went there. Things that would not be discussed. I didn't have bacon, for example. Yeah, exactly. I had eggs and toast, I think. So our waiter, who may have been under the influence of something, I don't know, 8 p.m. and I don't know if it was a he or she, comes up to us, and we didn't know if we were having a boy or girl. And our boy name was Graham. And I swear, Heath and I both heard the waiter say something like, graham cracker? Do you want graham crackers? I swear this person was, can I say hi? They're high on something? Can I say that? I guess. But we were like, oh my gosh, that's a sign we're having a boy. And I thought we were having a boy all along. I'd had one dream at the beginning that we were having a girl. And I did. I wanted a girl. Heath said he didn't care, which I didn't. Of course, you just want a healthy baby. It's true. But I preferred a girl. So we get to the hospital, and obviously we now think we're having a boy, and our doula met us there. And I was 80% effaced when we got there. It was like, what? Where did this come from? Because I was like nothing earlier that morning.
Yeah.
So they broke my water, which was disgusting. I couldn't get over how much fluid there was. It was so embarrassing. It's like, this is disgusting. Every time I got up, I mean, you guys know, it just keeps I thought your water breaks and then
you're dry.
You're done. Yeah. But it's not like that. And there's so much blood, and oh my gosh. So anyway, the doula helped me a lot. I was so happy I had a doula there because I love my husband to death, but I just didn't want to rely on him for our first. I just didn't
know what they're doing.
They just don't. They do not. And a doula does. And she was wonderful. And, she would do the oils. She would try to get me in different positions. I was very resistant to that. I don't remember any of this, but reading back through my notes or my email that I guess I wrote a week after the birth, I now remember she got me in the shower at one point, and it did feel good, but getting my monitor and or whatever I had on me at the time, and having to get up and move when I was in this one position that felt good. I just did not want to do it. So they probably broke my water around before 10 p.m. And they start pitocin a few hours in, maybe 4 hours in. And I was told I was at between a 4 and a 5. So I'm like, okay. So they thought that the baby was low and this was going to go quickly. And it did not. I mean, it wasn't horrible. Like, you guys have heard it all. You've heard
Heard it all.
really quick
I feel like we
and really, yeah. And then like people that have gone through 23-hour labors are like, shut up. It was not horrible. But I mean, by 7 a.m., I remember there was a shift change. You know, the new nurse comes in, and I did not like this nurse. It was really unfortunate because I liked everyone else at this hospital. But she was just really insensitive, and you could tell, just said things the way that she wanted to say things, like, I'm in labor, you know, like, not cool. And then one thing that was just really discouraging, had nothing to do with her, but she told me that I was at a 5, whereas like, I guess an hour or two before that, they had said I was between a 6 and 7. So that was like discouraging. You know, at that point, I remember I was getting really defeated. And I think we called my doctor, and we ultimately decided to, like, I remember we had him on the phone, like with my doula, and they talked me into an internal monitor and then upping my pitocin, but like gradually, come to find out, they were doing it like every 20 minutes, like increasing it a lot. And so it got intense. And by this point, it was like 9 a.m., 10 a.m. in the morning, and I just couldn't do it anymore, you guys. Like, I remember at one point I was completely naked. I don't know how not that that's weird because you're in labor, but I just don't remember getting completely naked. And
You were up all night.
Yes. I was so tired, Natalie, and I hadn't taken a nap that day because I was so anxious about this induction that was going to happen. And then the few nights before that, I think I had been having some labor. I just didn't know for sure. But I think that was it was like more back labor. So I had a ton of sleep. So I was exhausted, utterly exhausted and disoriented because the room was dark. And then I remember when the anesthesiologist finally came, the lights were on, and it was 10 a.m. outside, you know, so it was just I was just disheveled. But so, yeah, like I start to go through transition. I didn't realize it at the time. And I'm like at a breaking point. I'm like, I cannot do this any longer. Like, because the pitocin, unbeknownst to me at the time, had been turned up so much. Like, I mean, the contractions were coming so fast, and they were so much more intense because of pitocin. And, yeah, I just was like, I need an epidural. Now, I was a little hesitant because I didn't know if I could sit still. And my husband and doula read that as, is she going to regret this? And I was not like gung-ho about, I'm definitely not getting an epidural. I preferred not to get one. But I was never saying, you know, I never went into it being like, I'm definitely doing this without one. So that frustrated me because I'm like, guys, no, I freaking want one. Like, I don't know if we can cuss on this, but I'll try not to. But the little feelings, I'm like channeling their podcast. And I'm also sitting here thinking, I'm so exhausted right now because it's like 8, almost 9 o'clock p.m. like here. And do you guys listen to their podcast?
Oh, yeah. Oh, we are the biggest fan.
But like, I'm so happy to.
Yeah.
That's what I feel like right now. But anyway, and that's what I felt like then. So the anesthesiologist does come in, and I had told them when I found out how high my pitocin was to turn it off.
How high did it get?
That's a great question. I want to say like, is 20 like
that's insane.
Okay. Maybe it's not 20 then. Maybe it's not.
Oh my God. My OB was like, it was like 248, then like 3 hours.
Yeah. And that's how we started too, Natalie. But I feel, so yeah, it probably wasn't 20. People listening to this are going to be like, you're an idiot. And I'm not a nurse. I'm a lawyer. So anyway, I was going through transition, and I was also on a lot of pitocin. So that was not fun. So I get the epidural, and you guys, like, I never regretted it. I never regretted it. Mm-hmm. It immediately obviously relaxed me, and I had like an hour of rest, which was awesome. And then I think I started feeling pressure, and they checked me, and they're like, you're at a 10, because I was at a 9. After I got the epidural, they checked me again, and I was at a 9. So I was like, oh my gosh, like I almost made it. And I don't know how I could have done it any longer. Like, I do not know how I could have done the Ring of Fire. Like, I just don't. And so I was at a 10 when, like, an hour in, and they said, it's time to push. I'm like, I don't know how to. I don't know what this means. They're like, we'll help you. And I pushed apparently for like 45 minutes, which I feel like it seemed like a long time in the moment, but I know people that have pushed longer. I do remember at one point, like some of the nurses kept saying, the baby's almost here. The baby's almost here. And I said, I know that's not true. You keep saying that. Don't say it again. I know it's not true. I know how this works. Meaning, like, you know, there's some progress and then the baby will kind of go back in. And so, yeah. So doctor arrives and I guess he asked me, do you want to have a mirror to look? And I didn't. I don't know why. I just did not want to at the time. I guess I was just very freaking laser focused on getting this baby out. And yeah, the baby comes out. And I like look up and I do say this in the book. The umbilical cord is what I must have seen because I thought it was like a penis. Obviously I only saw part of it. And I think I remember thinking, this is what I thought. Like, yeah, it's a boy, of course. And then what felt like a long time passed, the baby's on my chest and he whispers in my ear, it's a girl. I was like, but I just lost it, you guys. And the unfortunate part of it is that during this incredibly special time where I'm in a lot of pain, they gave me a little more of the epidural, but I'm also like elated and all the emotions that, you know, you would think you're going to have, especially when it's been so hard to get to this point. Were somewhat overshadowed by the fact that Harlow was having trouble breathing. She was grunting. And so I have this on video because my doula did take some videos. And it's like almost like a wheezy sound too. And I never had a baby before, right? So I didn't know exactly what it was supposed to sound like, but I didn't think that was it. And so on the video, you hear me saying like every couple, like, I don't know, maybe every minute or two, is she okay? And they were like, she is. And they were kind of patting her back. And finally, I don't know if it was like 10, 15 minutes. I have no idea. They bring the NICU nurses in and they take her away. And that's when the nurse who increased my pitocin more than I told her to, more than we had agreed to, and who was just very kind of brash and not my favorite, she was really, really rude to me. I was like, what is happening? Where is my baby? You know, I think I knew she was going to the NICU. But I didn't know all the details. Like, you know, what do you think? What do you think is wrong? And she was just like snapped at me. And luckily my doula was with me, or I would have been alone because obviously my husband went, you know, you can't, after you have an epidural, you can't get up right away. You can't walk. And so my doula stayed with me while Heath went to the NICU. And then I remember my parents came in and I was kind of a mess because it's not how you think it's going to happen, right? Fortunately, things got better very quickly. I don't want to go into too much other than she had trouble transitioning is what medical professionals call it. I just want to like respect her privacy, you know, her medical privacy, if she were ever to listen to this, you know, when she's older. But things did work out, luckily, and she was there only for a few days. That sucked, you know, like even a few days of like, after 2 days, you were released, you go home, I'm having to pump. It was a lot, but oh my gosh, my heart goes out to people who have to spend weeks, sometimes months in the NICU. Like, I cannot imagine. People, you know, we get through what we have to somehow. And then I think after we're like, we decompress and it's like, how did we get through that? And I guess people that go through that, just stay strong in the moment. You know, you have to lean on your support system, but I didn't even have any other kids at the time that I had to take care of. So I could at least be there with her during the day, but we had to leave her at night because there was no place to sleep there. So anyway, that's pregnancy and birth. And then postpartum, yeah, I'm a very perfectionist. I feel like type A is kind of overused, so I'll be more specific. Like I have to have a to-do list. I have to be productive. I'm high strung. And so having a newborn, it rocks your world, right? Like no one who has their first baby has ever done this before. So it's hard for everyone. But yeah, that made you hear, especially before your time, like Brooke Shields talked about postpartum depression. That was very novel for someone to come out, public figure to come out and talk about that. It was very brave. And I remember hearing about it. And I think that was the genesis of, at least in my head, of people talking about that more, which was great. But yeah, it is so true. You don't hear about the anxiety that oftentimes is part of this postpartum experience for a variety of reasons, not just hormones, lack of sleep, and, I don't know, like having a human that you are responsible for, like that is, and so my anxiety for me, it looks different for everyone, but for me, it was around a few things. Her sleep, like, oh my gosh, if she's looking tired, I have to put her down. Like, I don't want her to get overtired. Like, yeah. It was so ridiculous because I took it to an extreme, and then illnesses, I am a germaphobe. And so that I didn't want people to touch her without washing their hands. That was, I would have freaked out if like someone would have come up to me at Target and tried to touch my baby, like, or kiss my baby. Yeah. No, like I would have. I think I have this, I don't want to say it's like resting face, but I have something about me that tells people not to like approach me. Like I don't get approached when I go to a bar. I don't get like approached. Like that's not. I have something about me, and my husband appreciates that. So, or at least he should. But anyway, yeah, like I am not approachable. In certain circumstances, like when I don't want to be.
When I traveled, like internet, like
yes,
do not.
Yes.
Fuck with me.
Yes. But it does also help when you're in Target with a newborn.
Yeah.
People don't. Yeah. And I didn't have a lot of people touch my belly when I was pregnant either. Like some people do.
Yeah.
Some people do. Yeah. Or comment even. Anyway, we could talk all night about those things. I did have some comments and I didn't handle them well. But anyway, that was a lot of it too. Illnesses. Oh, and yeah, like the breastfeeding, it was, the doula helped and having that. So I think what a lot of people maybe don't know is doulas not only help with the birth, but they help with the postpartum. Or, I mean, I guess you can set it up however you want, but my doula offered, I want to say like 2 postpartum visits or something like that. And then she became my friend. So she didn't care if I texted her, I was respectful of, her time. Like I wouldn't text her at 12 a.m., but yeah, she lived close. Like I remember she helped me figure out those damn, what are they called? Like I had a Tula with my third, but the baby
the
wrap.
Yeah. Solly or whatever.
Well, it wasn't a Solly. It was something even this was 2015. I don't know. It was whatever.
One.
It was like you had to like do all these like knots and
oh
my gosh. I never mastered that.
No,
but
never.
I remember there was one time I was cooking because again, I'm someone that like had to be doing stuff and like, I needed to make dinner, and I remember I was so proud when I cooked dinner one time. This was actually probably really dangerous. Don't do this if you're listening because I was by a stove, but I was wearing her and I was like doing stuff with one hand and
been there, done that.
Yeah. And I remember my dad being like, yep, you get a lot. You can figure out a lot you can figure out what you can do with one hand, can't ya? Like something like that. And I was like, yeah. And you're right, but I don't think you really realize how hard this is. Like, yeah.
Well, it's just like so funny how much we can do with one hand.
Mm-hmm.
But
yeah, sometimes they can't. Yes. Yes. We could also talk about that topic for a while, but we might digress. Yeah. Yeah. No, but in all seriousness, my husband was very helpful. He got up once Harlow started sleeping through the night. She was a good sleeper. He would get up if she ever did wake up. So, because I was like, I don't want her to think that I'm going to feed her. Once she was sleeping through the night, that was like my excuse. I'm like, I have to get ready for work in the morning. Like, you do it. And he did, he really always did. But yeah, there was a lot of anxiety, frustration around not having time to do the things that I wanted to do. And yeah, that sounds selfish, but I mean also laundry and of course showering. Cause again, I'm just a very like, guys, I have to-do lists throughout the day of what, like, I wake up in the morning and I kind of have a rough idea of what I want to get done. So yeah, that was a change, but I also have such amazing memories of that time too. Like, Harlow was my baby out of all three that slept with me, not at night, but napped with me the most. So we would do the contact naps. And I remember one time we had like a 3-hour nap together. Like, she was just on top of me in our guest room. And like, I'll never forget those moments, you know? So yeah, that's child one.
That she was like brought to you, like, you guys, your souls were connected. And I like, so sweet, because I feel that so much.
Do you? So I do. I feel like Harlow's someone, so she's my child that I feel like I know the most at this point because she's my oldest, right? I spent the most time with her without any other kid around. And I was just telling my husband this the other night, I think it was on her birthday. Like, if there is something after this life, I think I would recognize Harlow's soul. I think I would recognize it. And I don't know if I had felt that ever before, you know? So yeah, thanks for remembering that I said that about her soul. So should we go into my second?
Yeah.
Okay.
Mr. Harry.
Yeah. So he's such a character. Oh, and he's so cute and so sweet. And the pregnancy with Harrison was a complete surprise. And yeah, so I don't talk about any of this in my book. My book is about my path to motherhood, how I arrived at that destination. And I just don't go into the other pregnancies. It's just not what it's about. But so I like that I have this opportunity to discuss the other two a little bit more. Harlow was 1.5 years. It was January, so at the same time that we did our retrieval, you know, for her, or transfer rather, just 2 years later. It's January 2017, and we went to Hawaii with my parents, and I remember being on this boat. We were whale watching, which was really cool, but I had such motion sickness. And I thought that was kind of weird, or I don't know if I thought it was weird, but it was a lot, and no one else had it on the boat. And come home from that trip, and I'm like, oh, I haven't had my period. And I was a little different now, but then I was really regular, like 28 days, even if I traveled. Travel was not a reason why. And so I was like, oh my gosh, I could be pregnant. No way, though. There's no way, but I could be. And so I just happened to that morning, like I said, look at my calendar. I looked at my calendar, realized I was late, and got a pregnancy test on my way to work. And I took a test in my office bathroom, and I was like, it came up immediately. It's like those COVID tests. If you have it, it comes up. Okay. We all know now. Yeah. If you know, you know, and it's 2023, so we all know. It comes up really freaking fast. It's not like, back in 2021, we were like, I don't know, these tests work, these COVID tests. No, it's like a pregnancy test. If you are, it comes up. And but I had never had that. I had taken one with Harlow because I wanted to.
Yeah.
After I had the call from the IVF clinic, that's a whole nother story too. But I took one because I wanted to take a picture of this positive pregnancy test. And so, yeah, I had done that. But otherwise, I had never had something like this happen, where I was completely surprised and it stuck. This pregnancy stuck. And I just remember being in the bathroom, the stall, and being like, no fucking way. And I hope I can cuss on this because you guys are going to have to bleep this out. Absolutely. If I can't.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Golden Hour Birth Podcast. That was the end of part 1 of Katherine's story. We'll be back next week with part 2. Thank you for joining us on this episode of the Golden Hour Birth Podcast. We hope you've enjoyed our discussion and found it insightful and beneficial. Remember, the Golden Hour Birth Podcast is made possible by the support of listeners like you. If you appreciate the content we bring you each week, consider leaving us a review on your favorite podcast platform or sharing the show with your friends and family. Your support helps us reach more people and continue creating valuable episodes. If you have any questions, suggestions, or topics you'd like us to cover in future episodes, we'd love to hear from you. You can reach us on our website, www.goldenhourbirthpodcast, or connect with us on social media. We value your feedback and want to make sure that we're delivering the content you want to hear. Before we sign off, we'd like to express our gratitude to our incredible guests who joined us today. We are honored that they trust us enough to be so open and vulnerable. We're grateful for their time and willingness to share their stories with us. If you're interested in taking the conversation further with us, join us on our Facebook group, The Golden Hour Birth Circle. We'll be back next week with another exciting episode, so be sure to tune in. Until then, stay golden and remember to take care of yourself. We'll catch you on the next episode of the Golden Hour Birth Podcast. Bye!